and welcome to our, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. And I'm seeing a lot of people that are South African and tempted to speak in this, but that's not going to work out very well. So we'll proceed in English. My name is Nokukhanya Dili. I'm here as a board member of CSVR. I am South African myself, and I'm based here in Washington, D.C. I work with the World Bank currently. Here today, I'm just going to introduce the panel that will be joining us and then perhaps introduce the session. So first of all, I'd like to introduce and thank the Minister and the MEC, Ms. Bukiwe Fanta, who is the MEC for the Department of Social Development in the Eastern Cape. And she's joining us here and will be sharing with us some of the innovations that Government of South Africa has put in place to empower people and women living in rural areas. Then we're also joined by Ms. Helisa Nkomo, who is the CEO of the Commission for Gender Equality in South Africa. And she will be here also helping us highlight some of the things that have come out in the CGE report on rural women's access to technology. I'm also joined by Ms. Tuti Jani. Ms. Tuti Jani is actually joining us as the director of Nareta Service Private Limited from India. And we're very happy to have her because she'll also be giving us a comparative. It's not on. Huh? Okay, thank you. So Ms. Truti is actually joining us, and she'll be giving us a comparative look at what is happening in India with regards to innovation affecting rural women. And finally, we are also joined by Anna Moyo, who is currently the executive director of CSVR. And as you know, CSVR has put this program together, and she will actually share some highlights coming out of the reports that we did around rapid response research, which are highlighting the gaps of innovation, opportunities of rural women in South Africa. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining me. And thank you all for coming. I think one of the things that I just wanted to highlight about this session was really that a lot of progress has been made in trying to empower women in general, including women who are living in rural areas, but that there are some limitations and gaps that still exist. Limitations related to things like ownership of land, limitations to just access and infrastructure. But some of the things that have come through are what has happened during the COVID and the way in which the world has shifted to digital platforms. And what does that mean for people that don't necessarily have access to technology, which we know that people who are living in rural areas tend not to have, but we also know that women tend to be a little bit more disproportionately affected by the lack of access to technology. So the session is really going to be highlighting what research has been done around this, what are the findings, and then also move on to look at what are the innovations that some people have actually started putting in place, including comparative research from what has been done in India and maybe what we can learn in South Africa and maybe in some other African countries. So to begin and get start off the process, we will hear from the panelists and then we will be able to have a Q&A session. And I encourage the panelists to share reports and experiences, but I think it's also a good moment for us to do a little bit more of critical thinking. So even if there are questions that can't be answered because maybe the answers are not, at least to put those questions out so that, you know, they may be things that we can take to different spaces and take them up maybe in terms of research or advocacy. So I'm going to start with you, Anna, and maybe you can just share with us some of the key highlights from the CSVR report.
Thank you, Nox. Good afternoon, good evening, also in the world. Thank you so much for the opportunity to highlight some of the research findings from the rapid response research in South Africa from communities in Northwest, Eastern Cape, KZN, as well as Western Cape, just highlighting the experiences of rural women when it comes to their empowerment. So our report highlights the challenges that women face, the factors that hinder their empowerment, and then the report also covered some of the innovative ways that highlight the resilience of women in rural areas, living and working in rural areas. And we make recommendations to government, to civil society, as well as to the corporate sector on what can be done to amplify some of the best practices, some of the innovation, and just how we can also ensure resilience of women, particularly when looking at threats and challenges that they contend with on a daily basis. So the research that we carried out focused on key informant interviews with women in living and working in these rural areas. And amongst the challenges that they face, of course, the systemic and structural challenges around gender-based violence, patriarchy, employment, high levels of illiteracy, for instance, in rural areas. These are some of the things that were coming up as challenges that they face and factors that also hinder some of their empowerment in rural areas. Our research particularly focused as well on information where rural women literally in their own voices spoke about these experiences and how it impacts their daily lives. So when we speak of high levels of illiteracy, as we know, usually in rural areas, this is where we have high levels of poverty. This is where also girls particularly face a lot of problems in just accessing education. The schools are too far, they have to walk long distances to access school. The schools are not well equipped with technology, other infrastructure and so forth. In some rural areas in South Africa, we have young girls and boys, or rather learners learning under a tree in incomplete classrooms and so forth, exposing them to weather elements and so forth. And technology in the form of having your computer labs, these are some of the things that have been existent in rural areas. So when a young girl, for instance, wants to go to university, they have to go to the nearest mall. The nearest mall sometimes is a 3-hour journey just to access a computer where they can fill the form just to apply at a university to access tertiary education. So you can imagine when you have to take a taxi for 3 hours, the issue also comes up is the issue of taxi fare or money for transport to access the mall. And these are some of the challenges, or these are some of the issues that we highlighted as impeding their access, for instance, to empowerment. So already without education, that's one big hindrance to them accessing empowerment or being empowered. Women also highlighted some of such as unemployment in rural areas. As we all know, this is where most people move away from to access employment in urban areas. This is where you have industrialization. This is where you have most of the big companies located. In rural areas, everyone is moving away from there. Unemployment is rife, particularly affecting women. We have a situation where most men move to urban areas in search of greener pastures, in search of employment, and it's women who are predominantly left behind in rural areas to tend to the home, look after children, and so forth. So unemployment in rural areas is one of the big challenges. Issue of poverty as well is a big challenge, and that coupled with climate change impacts as we're experiencing across the globe right now, and South Africa is not immune to the impacts and effects. In most rural areas in South Africa, subsistence farming is still the perhaps the only way that livelihoods are sustained. And with climate change impacts, this means that we have erratic weather patterns. The rainfalls are also erratic in a way. If it's not floods, then it is drought. So it's really extreme weather patterns, either to the floods or also to poverty and famine. And a number of communities have experienced this. One of the communities we we went to Osizweni in KZN. This is a community that was affected by floods in KZN in South Africa. And these experiences are some of what also is eroding the livelihoods of women who are predominantly dependent on subsistence farming. They can't farm, they can't produce. The land that they have cannot produce. Some of the issues that Knox also spoke about, issues of access to land. Some of the women we interviewed highlighted that in order for them to access land just to do subsistence farming, they have to be accompanied by men in their lives just to access land, either from the chief or the headman. Very much a challenge for them if they go alone. And this is compounded if the woman is a widow, for instance. They need to then sort of be exposed to harmful cultural practices like ubungena, a tradition where a woman whose widowed husband, a woman who is widowed or who lost their husband has to be married off to the brother or a relative of their husband to continue in the family, meaning that if the deceased husband had land, then accrues the brother or the who then marries the woman to continue having the woman in the family. So these are some of the challenges that women face. And of course, also there is the issue of gender-based violence that is endemic in South Africa and elsewhere across the globe. Again, compounding the challenges that women face when trying to access empowerment. We know gender-based violence really disempowers women, and within a society or within a community in rural areas where the police station as a criminal justice measure to address gender-based violence is far away. A woman, in order to access a police station to report gender-based violence, will mean that she needs money for transport, and within a context where she is unemployed, she is fully dependent on the husband. In most cases, the very abuser. This then means that she can access a criminal justice system to report the case and hold or the perpetrator accountable. So all of these different is what women face in trying to access their empowerment. In also unpacking some of the specific factors that affect their empowerment, one of the issues that really came out strongly is that even in communities, women included in key decision-making processes and in just accessing empowerment initiatives. And one of the reasons causing the fact that we are still having even some of the local government or local structures of leadership predominantly women in these positions, women not in these positions. So we really don't make decisions around empowered initiatives that affect them or that are meant to fit them. They become, in the very few cases where the beneficiaries, they really come at the tail end of this process without really input into what will work for them, what will not work, and what strategies should be employed to make their life better. Another challenge, again, perhaps is that of emerging from the 19 in South Africa and the rise of us really accelerating the fourth industrial revolution, that most of the opportunities and it are now being not by word of mouth previously, but we are increasingly using technology to pass information via WhatsApp, via emails, and so on. And women in rural areas highlighted to us that they don't own smartphones. Therefore, they do not have access to some of these plans. They do not have literacy around knowing how to operate an email, and so forth. So already highlighted to us in internet, they get to know about what's happening during implementation when other people from other communities have been brought in to implement their empowerment initiatives. So the issues are really many. What also we tried to highlight is innovation and some of the ways that women have tried to address some of these issues, even in these communities, the rural communities where they live, and work in. And one of the ways that women have come out saying they've tried to do, particularly around the challenge of climate change, is that they use crop diversification methods of farming, where they see that, okay, sorghum doesn't grow well here anymore, or millet grow very well, maize grow very well here. So they try to diversify the crops that they are planting with the hope that there will be an uptake with the crops that they're now growing, and that they can actually sustain their families and secure the right to food for their families and the communities that they live in. They've also spoken about some of the initiatives that the corporate sector and government has put in place to try and address some of the challenges that they face, particularly around agriculture, around some of the skills development, and particularly focusing as well on the most vulnerable, for instance, women living with disability in these communities, and having some form of small projects that are started particularly to ensure that they sustain their livelihoods and have ways of supporting their families. In our recommendations, some of the recommendations to address some of these challenges that we've highlighted in our research, the need, for instance, for the government to raise awareness about women's human rights and opportunities. We are still increasingly seeing women look at development as part of the handouts or the benevolence of leaders to them. They don't see development as a right that they can actually hold government and other stakeholders accountable to provide. So the need to raise awareness about development as a right, empowerment as a right, and a human right that women have is imperative, is important. We also recommended that there is a need for women to mainstream women's involvement in decision-making, particularly when it comes to empowerment initiatives that are meant to benefit women in communities. So we are not looking at leadership all the way to parliament or cabinet, but we are looking at localized leadership and women taking part and being consulted and making decisions at the localized level, particularly when it comes to their empowerment. For civil society, in just 1 minute, for civil society and the corporate sector, we highlighted the need for transformation, particularly around norms pertaining to unpaid care work. Women are predominantly undertaking unpaid care work, and even when women are doing this work, they are tired from doing this work. There's really no benefit to this work. It's not being seen as work, and therefore there are no benefits for women, particularly when now they leave marriages. They're seen as people who are not paid, or who are not working, who are not contributing to the economy in the home, for instance. And so we need to change around unpaid care work that women find themselves doing most of the time, even women who are actually employed formally. And lastly, the need for empowerment for women through NGOs and the corporate sector. The corporate sector, through corporate social investment, plays a role as well in empowering women. And this needs also to be mainstreamed into empowerment initiatives that women really need in communities, and the consultations that are important in ensuring these are sustainable and actually benefit women and respond to their lived realities and experiences is also important. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. I think what I didn't do in the beginning was to also give the panelists a time guideline. I apologize for it, but I think because you know, the research report that we are sort of focusing on is CSR, so you know, we can give you some great time. What I'm going to do is request that the panelists please limit yourself to a maximum of 10 minutes so that we can have really enough time for the audience to engage in what you've said. I think Anna highlighted a number of challenges that are faced by women in the rural areas, but I think maybe it's not very new, but you know, something that has not necessarily been spoken about for a very long time is around access to technology and issues of climate change. I'm going to throw over now to Pelisa to actually maybe take us through what you have found about the reason of access to women, access to technology for women living in rural areas. I can hear you. I'm not sure they can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, police. Thank you so much to very much an important conversation. And I think without believing we think that there's a very clear consensus that women who live in rural areas face areas and also face several conscious and unconscious biases based on their location. But also besides that, they also don't receive sufficient support in terms of coverage resource administration. For example, under the access to infrastructure, and I'm going to hear the ends of thinking, probably sharing some of the local stories. We had a situation in the Eastern Cape province where women had to cross the river, and there were guys who were actually ferrying people in a big container. She had to be stuck in that container for about 10 to 15 minutes to cross the river. She gets to pay the person, and I think already that signals that women in rural areas, and I think this might just be a South African example, but I know that it happens almost across in the continent, actually. So this morning, for instance, I think I'm going to take as well a little bit of a just as a economic concept, I kind of talk about the correlates. So this morning I was watching on television one of the banks, Silicon Valley Bank, is collapsing and it's sending a shiver in terms of the market about what are the implications around access to finance and now going forward. And I was thinking about this topic. That if banks, for example, collapsing due to either the issue of capital with the governments that are not able to meet, the implication fundamentally is that women who are involved in sustained farming or agriculture will actually struggle to have access to finance. So while it might seem to be such a removed issue around the banking system and what happens, it has direct implications about access to finance and in particular for women who are located in rural areas. And I do think that what it therefore does is that it then does entrenches structural exclusion that women continue to experience. Now, in terms of our conversation, I think just going to just the top highlights around the key things that we found in our research, even though, for instance, in the context of South Africa, is that we have a better penetration in terms of internet, for example, with access of 92% in terms of access to smart cell phones in Africa, we're about 14%. But obviously, the key issue is that the cost of data actually inhibits the women actually participate in the technology. That's the first issue. Then the other one is the poor investment into the network, is that women have to move from different sports. I mean, there's always a joke sometimes that women have to be able to hear or have a proper conversation. The other one is also around just digital literacy, just full, even though they have access to a smartphone. But in fact, the benefits of having that smartphone, they actually don't understand that in fact they can transact into it, they can use it for digital marketing, and they can use it actually to empower themselves, using the smartphone. I do think so. So in essence, I mean, there could be an entrenched multiple intersectional discrimination in how we pursue our technology as well as innovation. And I think this is one of those unintended consequences. But also it highlighted an important issue, though, that while we would want to move into technology and innovation, but in fact, we can't use technology and innovation alone to correct social challenges, social economic challenges. And in fact, it means that a technical thinking or a social thinking needs to be infused within the technological development. So in our research, those are some of the things we found. But I think as part of just way forward, is that so Commission on Gender Equality is part of 5 countries, which is in this context, South Africa, it's Mauritius, it's Tunisia and Seychelles. There's a pilot program on technology and innovation that really looks at capacity building and digital upskilling. But the good thing about what this project does, it's looking at, for example, digital marketing and advocacy online So it interface between what you call your e-commerce opportunity, but also those who are involved in community-based organization, they could actually use, they're taught on how to use technology to do online. The other one is around digital financing for women, and the other one is really looking at, just broadly at creating spaces for women to participate in also in public life and how to use it. But of course, you also need to have a very ripe and matured political climate for people to use technology, particularly in terms of the public life. But also fundamentally, what this project also does is really promoting the development and the production of the local content. Because I know that, all of us here, by the way, when we tune into technology, we tend to consume, a content that we're not familiar with. But I do think that one of the things I appreciate about today's conversation is that we really need to start promoting, women's rural, their lived experiences and making sure that they're reflected into the content, so that you also use the technology for solidarity, and that people who are located in Mali can know the story of someone located in South Africa, someone in Mali can know the story located in Brazil. And I do think that there's an opportunity to use technology for that. I think just lastly, in terms of the recommendation, is that, the digitization or technology provide a wealth of opportunities for all of us. But we must make sure that it supports the change that we seek, and particularly those who are located in the margins of society who are actually excluded. That's one. I do think that there needs to be an investment in actually digital, training, the capacity building, so that when people have access to smartphone, they actually know how to maximize and benefit from the smartphone, instead of having several, apps which they can't even benefit on because they don't understand their usages. I think the other one is also to really look from a civil society perspective, to look at what we call legal loopholes, which sometimes get exploited by those in the tech industry. Amongst those is sharing the data of women without their permission, without them even knowing that their data is actually being shared. I think that's one thing. And I think lastly, that we must advocate for a simple, inclusive, accessible, and meaningful, technological development. And I think amongst the key things is that we need to really support young people, because young people can actually develop and design technologies or technological instruments that could actually speak within their own local context.
Thank you very much, Phyllis. I think you've raised some very interesting points here, and perhaps just some things for you to think through for the Q&A would be, particularly around the issue of advocacy. If women begin to use this space, particularly rural women, for issues of advocacy, knowing that we sometimes are seeing globally the shrinking space of human rights defenders and advocates. How do we also go about protecting those spaces so that people don't become vulnerable to political threats and reprisals? But maybe hand it over then to NEC to just maybe talk us through what are some of the innovations that the government has put in place, anything that is interesting that's happening, not just in the Eastern Cape, but in other parts of the South African context.
Thank you, Director. Good establishment. Ladies and gentlemen. Am I audible? Yes. I think the parliament should bring in the person. Okay. Thank you. I think the research report that's trying to cover the of our foreign South Africa. But one way that we subdue that yes, indeed, women are still facing a number of challenges in our country. The issue of gender-based violence and inequality is still on the rise in their own friends. The tertiary situation, especially in rural areas where women still have no voice. My province is a difficult area where women are still living in those background areas and with high level of I understand. That is taking a lot of women are disadvantaged, women are for those people that are second, even prepared to take care of their sons will take over the lands, despite that humanity. The voice of women is still waiting, but with the hope that the House of Operational Leaders, that we are working with the House of Operational Leaders just to try and rope them in. We have involvement of workers in that space, women of the chiefs that are assisting us a lot, that to take away those tendencies. Women are being abused in their homes. We have an example of one that was so important, where a 95-year-old was murdered in their home by a son. Those are the stories that were sharing this. The issue of load shedding also is making a hell of a difference. Once our government is trying that they are electricity, but the issue of load shedding now is a problem, because the network is a problem where even those who will be there, when those falling in homes, they cannot access the network. They cannot access possibility, they cannot access anyone to want to help because of the network. But we believe that the new appointment of the Minister of Electricity will hope for the best, but the issue is really a problem for us. Our government has placed a number of acts, a number of policies to try and do away with the issue of gender-based violence. We've got national strategic plan policy and strategies with about six pillars to deal and address with gender-based violence. Also, we've got focus areas in that strategic plan of socio-economic of women and girls, the skill development of computer skills, access to internet, on how to use social media. We need awareness on GBV and F advocacy on human rights, also in economic empowerment, in line with the pillars that we have in that NSP. We need to capacitate women and girls with digital skills for job creation, a need for the empowerment and financial inclusion of women, provision of financial support through cooperatives. As a Department of State, we are giving our NPOs, non-government organizations, our NGOs, a lot of money for women to start their cooperatives. Unfortunately, also because they will start their chicken farming, starting with children, various companies, but unfortunately, each of them is also putting them in a negative spot, because even if for farming, we are using technology that is advanced that makes electricity. All those children will die. And the issue of, I had a meeting some time ago of the Ghana Society, the women that are having palace in there, they were complaining that they have to close their palace because the palace need a lot of electricity. So the issue of trading is destroying women projects, and the existing women, especially for women, the issue of farming is they are doing well. The issue of oats, sheeps, vegetables, but because of electricity, it's a problem. Use of technology to market their products is being utilized. Our government is assisting us in June, the area where in the report of community safety, it is the issue of gender-based violence is on the rise in that particular area. And the government to have to launch a multimedia ICT center to promote digital inclusion of women with and persons with disabilities. Partnership with private, we are partnered with partnership with your Vodacom, your MTN, and all other IT companies to bring IT solution for the more access of women. Also, the issue of gender-based violence cases where women have been raped. We had a slight challenge of DNA labs when cases were delayed to be finalized. But recently, because of the fight of gender of the activity in that area, we managed about weeks ago we have about 2 laboratories that have been opened so that we speed up the cases of rape of our older people and women. As the province, the issue of infrastructure is still a problem. The issue of infrastructure is a problem. The issue of climate change is a problem. Now that I'm here, about 2 kids have been washed away in the river. That what is happening, the issue of climate change is really impacting negatively, especially in the rural area. Because whatever, they don't have towns, they don't have shops, they must travel kilometers away from shops to buy groceries, but they have to cross big rivers. Unfortunately, the issue of infrastructure is a problem. They are being swept away by those rivers. But with the hope, our government is doing a good job with the empowerment of girls in schools, the issue of scholar transport that we have as government for about a child, if he's traveling 6 or more kilometers to school, especially in rural areas, there's scholar transport to care for them. The issue of nutrition in the part of poor schools in quintile 3 below, all those schools are getting this scholar, the nutrition. At least our government is trying by all means. We've got NSFAS in our universities, learners and children are coming from the part of the poor are being assisted with NSFAS. The issue of rights that is given from child, from birth until 16 years, those are the programs that our government is assisting in that particular country. We've got also empowerment programs with total education where girls have their clubs in schools that open clubs that we're calling girls education empowerment programs for girls say to voice out whatever they're experiencing, whether it's at home, in school, wherever. Those clubs are assisting them to speak out. The issue of land is a problem. But with the Constitution of South Africa, Section 25, that has been voted in favor of us, that women now are able to get land and will be able to plow wherever they want to plow. Working together, we can do more. In those few words, I will try to stop there. But we as a country, we are trying on this, and good news that we can one political that one can share. We are assisted as South Africans by political will of our agency as a lead of that country. The issue of employment equity and the employment issue of 50-50 that as agency is enforcing now. Right now, we're coming back from a conference where for the first time out of 111 years, we have an official with a woman that 3 of them out of 6. So that's a good news to us because ANC is setting tone for everyone to follow. So that women that must not be in the kitchen, women must take leadership position. So those are the good news to us, because even the opposition parties are going to follow suit, because ANC as a leader has put women in the forefront. We've got women in position of power as ministers, and as a country, we are saying it's not going to be less than 50%. And we're pushing that even in the rural areas. That what must happen. Women must lead in the rural areas. Women must have a voice in the rural areas, I think.
Thank you very much, MEC. I think as I was listening to you, I was realizing that the solution needs to be multi-pronged, because you put so many things in place and then you have a problem with electricity, and it almost sort of reverses all the efforts that you're making with regards to progress and technology in the rural areas. There was a time that I lived in Liberia for a little while, and one thing that was always fascinating was people did have smartphones, but there was no electricity. So they had to go somewhere and charge it at somebody else's house. So you go and you leave your phone somewhere for a day or half a day. And if someone is trying to get in touch with you, you will only find out when you come and you get your phone back. So I think, the issue that you're highlighting about load shedding is sort of eroding some of the progress that is being made with regards to technology in the rural areas. So now we're going to turn to Trupti, and you wanted to share a video before you speak. So perhaps let's do that, and then we can go into some of the innovations that we see coming out of India.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible? Okay. Hello. Yeah. Yes, as you mentioned, I just want to share that these are the problems which have been shared with the research. What are the problems facing by the women at the grassroots level? The similar problems are facing in India as well as in other parts of the globe. So what we have done, that we would like to share with you now, how we come out with all the challenges, and how the technology helps the women to lift their standards, and how to deal with the domestic violence with the technological innovations. That's we are going. Thank you.
Okay, we can play the video.
This is salt affected soil. Nothing can be grown here. Water doesn't percolate.
While the whole this land area is waterlogged in the monsoon seasons, the water will inserted into the soil through this bungru, through these perforated holes. So water will go inside the soil and it will store into the soil aquifer. As the water is stored into the soil aquifer, we can easily lift it out this water for the irrigation purpose in the lean season.
પાકતું નહીં, બસ કાઠિયાવાડ મજૂરી કરવા જતા રહેતા.
Yeah, so this is not just the one story of the one Kesar man living in the rural area of the remote area, one of the villages, semi-arid regions in the India. I think it is the story of the nearly nowadays, nearly 100,000 women farmers have been benefited with this innovation, Bungru, and then they have come out they have now the say in that economic empowerment, and now also they have formed the groups and they are dealing with the domestic violence and other social aspects of the gender discrimination. So basically, I'm Trupti Jain. I'm coming from India. I'm western part of India, where is the India and Pakistan border is there. So all the problems, I mean, the land, women doesn't have the land rights, or maybe not any assets right. That is the basic problem for the domestic violence occurrence at the rural area. So only if I talking about India, the percentage, then my state Gujarat has the 3% women only have the land rights, and in the highest number is 13% out of 26 states. So you can just imagine what kind of discrimination is there. And because they don't have the assets, they can't go, and they don't have any place to go outside, and they have to suffer household problems, violence, and other things. And economic conditions also, I mean, they are most sufferer in the climate change impact, as well as the in the health aspects also, they are in the least priority in that. So what we have done is we have tried to solve the problems. Now coming to the innovations. So agriculture activities, almost all the activities done by the women in the rural area, but they don't have any power on the outcomes of the economic outcomes. All the crops sold by the men, and they have all the money with them. The women are just working in the labor as a labor in their own unpaid activity kind of things. What in the urban area we are doing the household activities is unpaid, but rural area agriculture activities are unpaid, which is very not common and known by the various at the national level. So this is the situations. Now their land was, I mean, waterlogged in the monsoon season because their percolation capacity is very low. So although they have the plenty of the water, they could not grow the crop. And in the lean season, because the borewell is going deeper and deeper, so they cannot afford the borewell. So they don't have the water in the for the irrigation in the lean season. So they have to migrate in the urban area as a construction labor work, and they are finding all the kind of the bonded labor problems. So what? So they have the piece of land, but is uncultivable. What the Bungru has done? Bungru means a big straw. Is a cylindrical kind of structures which you have seen in the video. So we are inserting the Bungru. We are injecting the water into the soil strata so that in the monsoon they have the water for the irrigation. I mean, they have the land for the irrigation water free. So and in the lean season, the same pipe we are lifting out the water and use it. So 0 crop to at least 2 crops in a year. So that makes them they reverse their lives and they reverse the migration, reverse that the whole things. And most important thing is that one unit is able to take care of the 5 to 7 farmers' land, because we have the very smallholder farmers, and the smallholder farmers means less than 1 hectare of the land. So one unit catchment area could be 7 hectares. So 5 to 7 farmers can have the 1 unit, and this is make them the very cost effectiveness of the having the Bungru in their farmlands. But to work in the 5 to 7 farmers together is not a cup of the man. So there the women's come out, and then they come forward. And this innovation has been developed with the women farmers' traditional knowledge, their practices, and their patience. Like 7 to 8 years to develop this innovation. And the women farmers keep consistently involve themselves into to find out some kind of solutions. So women farmers are now come together, 5 to 7 women farmers, and they are not sharing the labor only, sharing water, electricity available, and also the sharing the cropping. I mean, which kind of the crops will be taken by the one farmer, other farmers kind of things. So because they are working in the group, there are the 2 benefits happen. One thing is that without water, land was not cultivable. Now water rights is with women. So their same economic activity has been increased tremendously. I mean, the household income increased triple as 3 times per year. So this is the women, and second thing is that they are working in the peer group. So now they are less victims of the domestic violence, because now the men understood that they have the other 5 women support with the 1 woman. So it also affects the social aspects also. So so now my women, if you are calling them, what is the major benefit happens in your life due to have this water access? So she said that we want, we have a dignified lives. Now earlier people are calling it the Kesher, now they are calling us a Kesar Ben. Ben means is a respect table, you can calling someone. So that's what they are finding. They're finding not only the economic benefit, but also the dignified of the life. So if the women farmers are really, and now we have working in the 12 states of India, and also out of India, we have successfully piloted this route in Ghana, in Vietnam, in Bangladesh, and now we are trying to find out the partners in Rwanda and Kenya to piloting these projects. So this is the example how the women can come out with all the kinds of the problems, and all the gender and technology can't go together. That is a myth, and that's they have proved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shruti, for that. It's now almost 3:30, and I'm opening the floor for any questions from the audience. I think what I've observed here is that the panelists spoke about different types of technology, from electricity, from cellular technology, irrigation, technology related to how to rear animals in terms of cattle and chickens. But it seems that, you know, there might be a broader spectrum of technology that might be useful for people living in the rural areas. And perhaps, you know, the panelists can maybe talk to us about what definitions do you sort of use when you're defining technology. But I'm also going to open the floor and just see whether we have any questions that our audience has for the panel. So can I also request that when you ask the question, you just briefly state your name and introduce yourself to the audience. And please keep your questions short, so that we can have enough time to engage.
Thank you very much, CSPR, for this platform, and especially so far away from home, where we get to hear what it is we do from home, so far away from home, so it's really great. And especially to know what's happening in the rural areas, you know, as we stay in the urban areas. I want to do a comment, but I think I'll do the other side.
You didn't introduce yourself.
Sorry, so
Okay.
I am with IPAS, President of the International Non-Governmental Organization, actually based in North Carolina, but I'm based in Johannesburg and working remotely. We are partners for reproductive justice, both in the autonomy and as human rights. Working globally and in South Africa as well. I haven't heard today, especially when you talk about technology, and at a crucial time with climate change, when we've got COP27. Right now, I know South Africa has got $8.5 million for the just transition. I must be honest, I've not heard the women's voice in that. And for us to lose this opportunity, ladies, you know, and men again talk for us and come back with the money, and we have got no program, nothing. It's like missing the industrial age. That's what we're going to be doing. And especially at this time when we are women, now we are out there, our voices are being heard. We need to we need to get together, especially our ministers. It must actually be, this is it. And if we miss this one, we won't be able. This is the gravy train for us as women, and we should be part of that. With these solar panels being given by Standard Bank, where is the program for women in the rural areas to be part of this program? Where is it? I'm not seeing it. We are going to miss it, and please let's not miss it. I would like a comment on that one.
Thank you very much. I see Pinky, then that lady. Karen, you have a question over there first. The lady in the middle and.
And thank you to the panelists and thank you to CSBR for an informative report. What I would like to find out is you see violence.
Please say who you are.
My name is Pinky. I am from South Africa. I'm with civil society called Team Action. We are a coalition of organizations that are working against gender-based violence. So as you study the violence and the exclusion of women, I'm just raising a concern about women having conversations with women continuously, as though the elimination of women in traditional leadership is done by women. You know, it is men who exclude us in traditional leadership. We talk gender-based violence. It is men who perpetuate this violence against women. We're hearing now from India that you find that women are mostly involved in the hard labor, and the business transaction and the revenue generation is done by men. In studying this violence and these trends, are there conversations with men? Thank you.
Thank you, Pinky. We'll do the first round and then open the panel to respond.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Chukwuch. Based in DRC. For you. Thank you very much on this. I'm very impressed with some of the things that I heard. And my comment or my concern is how do we make these interventions sustainable? Stopping and piloting them. How do we make them bigger? And how do we ensure that there's political will to make it bigger so that we have a larger audience instead of stopping at projects that, because I know having worked with civil society, the piloting is very beautiful. And at the end of it, there's no sustainability to such things. So I think that's what I think we should do.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maraba and my family is from Ghana. I'm based in New York. And I have my master's in human rights and I do research around education, equity and inclusion. My question is regarding a comment made earlier by Anna, which I thought was great, regarding women advocating for sustainable development as a right. And I think it's interesting that sustainable development, depending on who you ask or where you're, where you're located, can look different. So my question is, how can rural women mobilize for sustainable development as a right to reframe the way development can be defined so that benefit their lifestyle without coming to sustainable development being from an urbanization or changing their way of life.
Okay, thank you, panelists. Maybe just to do a quick recap, and then I'll give everybody an opportunity to respond. There was a question around bringing women into the conversation on climate change. There was a question about why are women talking to themselves? Are you engaging men in these spaces? Question around sustainable and interventions that are also scalable. How do we create a sustainability in these interventions? And then the final one was, how do we mobilize women to start advocating for sustainable development? So Anna, perhaps I'll start with you.
Thank you. I will start with Ambassador Zwandila's interventions around the need to bring women to discussions or solutions to climate change, the just transition dialogues and conversations, particularly in South Africa, because it's one of the countries that even the West has actually invested in. We speak of the 8 billion that has been invested for just transition in South Africa, but women are really missing at the table, women become beneficiaries of the tail end of processes that are already decided upon, but they are not decision makers. And this is a challenge. And our researchers also highlighted this, particularly when women spoke about the fact that decisions are being made outside of them. They get to know about the processes at a later stage. So as a result, the solutions are not tailored for women. They are not contextual. They're not context specific to their lived realities and experiences. And this is a challenge. We really need to bring women to the table. And interestingly, just in our report actually also collected specific quotes from women where they actually said as well that they will need to be educated. We need civil society and other actors to come to the community level to talk to them about climate change and some of the issues around climate change, because women see that there are floods, but they don't connect this to climate change and the need for solutions that are tailored around addressing climate change impacts. For instance, they respond to these issues by using very little initiatives like crop diversification and many others, which really don't go a long way and are not sustainable. But if we actually educate them and raise awareness about climate change and start educating them, then they also have a lot to share and bring to the table in the solutions that are really sustainable for them in the long term, something that really will last, will stand the test of time on the ground, not them having solar panels. I think one of the things that we keep on lamenting, and it links also to the question around how do we ensure that the right to development is sustainable. I think that's also another challenge we have, because if solutions are tailored outside women, they cannot be sustained. And I think we have seen with some of the CSI initiatives that then adopt a one-size-fits-all to addressing issues in every community without actually bringing women or bringing stakeholders to the table for them to design and inform what kind of support or what kind of strategies or initiatives will actually empower women. We have a problem because then we have either something that is too big that cannot be sustained, something that, after 2-3 months, it falls flat and cannot really benefit women. Those are the kind of solutions that we end up with. So it's really important that we recognize that women are not only beneficiaries, but they're actually decision makers. They have agency, they know what they need, and they can actually design solutions that really suit them and that are sustainable. And once we remove them from the bracket of them being beneficiaries, disempowered people who need our support, who are in need, but literally look at them as stakeholders and partners in designing solutions that really empower them and sustain this empowerment and development that we are looking at, then we can begin to have what is sustainable on the ground, particularly around addressing the right to development. We have your Maputo Protocol, for instance, having the right to development for women in Africa. So it's a right, it's not an ask, it's not benevolence, it is not a need that women have. It's a right that they have, and they have every right to hold us accountable and claim it from governments, from civil society and other stakeholders when we go to communities and say we are trying to empower them and address some of the vulnerabilities and some of the disempowerment that they've gone through over the years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anna, you really covered the questions related to climate change, but also touched on the issues of sustainable development. I'm not sure if any of the other panels would like to talk to the issue of engaging men in the conversation. NEC.
Thank you. As a country, in almost all our districts, the issue of men becomes massive. We have men's forum in churches, in societies. These men's forum are dealing with dialogues. We're creating dialogues within men. We've got dialogues within boys. And those dialogues, I think, as a country, are going to assist us. We've got also those forums within House of Traditional Leaders, which is in Kosi, where the tribalistic approach is there. So these forums, dialogues of men, are crucial there. So they are assisting us, and we're seeing some benefits out of those, where boys are being taught and teach to respect girl children from home, from school. For the issue of is the sustainability of what you are talking about, especially the issue of the benefit with Employment Equity Act. Our government has an approach of having women caucuses that are guarding against the percentage that is there in the employment equity. To say we want 50%, not less, in all government departments, in municipalities, the employment of women, and also 2% of people with disabilities. As the government, we are definitely trying by all means that those 50%, each and every department is not less from the employment of women. They are not less than 2%. Recently, in March, we have accountability day, where all government departments, agencies, and municipalities are coming together to account for where are the women in the department, and also accounting for the budget of each and every department. We put a gender lens in the budget processes. But if I'm the Department of Transport, the 20 million that is there, how many were given that tender of 20 million? Women must not be subcontractors. Women must get big tenders like men. So that oversight program that we're having of women's programs and special programs to check each and every department to give us where are the women in your department? Are they getting the economic spin-off of getting big projects? Because normally it was these big tenders were issuing to males, but now with the gender lens as a country that we're putting, women now are tapping in those big tenders of roads, of houses. Women are contractors themselves now. We've got one in Nelson Mandela where they are fisheries. They've got their own boats fishing, and they're not subbing to anyone. Women are leading. So for sustainability, need monitoring, because this year you can meet that 50%, but if you don't monitor, men will jump in and women are at the periphery. So the monitoring strategy of that we're employing, I think, are giving us good benefits, but it's a push.
MEC, before I let you off and hand over to Pelisa and Truti, I think you sit in a very unique position in that you are having access to traditional leaders in ways that a lot of us don't. And it might be very useful for us to just give an example of how that engagement with the traditional leaders actually works for women, and some of the outcomes that we are beginning to see from the engagement with the traditional leaders.
And for us as a province, we have persuaded the House of Representatives to have the women in that sector to have their own forums, and that assisted a lot. We've got some that says Imbomba, Yamakoskas, Agomfu. They are penetrating as a result now. We have the chairman, national chairperson of the House of Representatives, who is a woman. Because of that forum of Imbomba, Yamakoskas, Agomfu, where even if they want to penetrate, there's issue of initiations. It was a taboo for us as women to talk about initiations. But through this Imbomba, we said, these are our kids as women that are dying in the bushes, and we cannot keep quiet. So those women of our country up to the young men. Women are saying no. We don't want to go to the forest and see what is happening, but what we want is to make sure that our children go to that school alive and come back alive. So the interaction that we have in Imbomba is giving us a good benefit.
Thank you very much for that insight. Shruti, Melissa, there are some questions that here on the table. I don't know if you wanted to add to anything that has been said by Anna and the MEC.
Yes, just want to kind of add, I think of the issue of men's forum, just to say that even at CGE, we actually set up our own men's forum, but sure, because we think that as an institution, we need to be part of thought leadership in as far as the transformative, but also ensuring that we deal with gender-based violence. One of the key issues, of course, with learning is the fact that a lot of men's forums are actually established, but there's very much little conversation that takes place around toxic masculinity and how toxic masculinity is embedded within patriarchy. So in essence, you're likely to have men's forums that are established in communities and in churches, but in fact, the issue is always about no conversation without us, or not, don't misrepresent our name, which is in this context of gender-based violence. But nothing about power dynamics, that are embedded within patriarchy and the social benefits that men tend to accrue associated with the patriarchal system. So we really want to move the needle, but we are not negating or discounting the movement around establishment. We think that it's the best move, but we think that we need to upscale the quality of the conversation to another level, because then, so that it's concomitant to the level mostly of oppression, gender, oppression and inequality, but also fundamental gender-based violence that we experience. Because if we have so many men's forums that are established, they must be concomitant with the nature of and the type of gender-based violence. And it means that some of the forums actually are having minimal impact to date, but they will still appreciate that men are starting to organize themselves. I think just another issue around the climate change. I think I can't agree more with you, because I think climate change in Africa, for instance, but globally, it's starting to introduce even new rights that I think women have not even started to interrogate. I think the focus has always been around the development finance mechanisms, around shifting the use of coal versus solar power. I think that's one issue. But also what happens to communities that get displaced because year in, year out, they're actually floods. I think we've been seeing that consistently in Mozambique, and the world and women of Africa have really been quiet about it. But now we're treating home in the corners of South Africa in Durban, what we've seen in Durban, one of the provinces along the coast, and as well as in the Eastern Cape. I think it's signaling actually that there's actually a need. Part of the need must be really about, firstly, it must be the resettlement, because I know that the response that tends to happen from government is to go and rebuild infrastructure in the very same places that are vulnerable, making communities even more vulnerable, women and children in particular. That's one. But also too, there's an issue around displacement, and as well as that people get disconnected in terms of their own cultural rights. And again, it means that when climate change hits, the new rights that are emerging amongst us is that, as citizens, women and children in particular, must be located in places where they can still continue with their lives. One, practice cultural rights. Two, have access to education. Three, have access to economic opportunities, employment opportunities. Four, and access to, as well as to healthcare and safer spaces as well, right? And I do think that, I think in the conversation it's been parallel, and part of it is that it has been really a near reaction. So I know Oxfam has developed a very interesting strategy on feminist climate change thinking. And I do think that from a South African perspective, I cherish it. So that would really be great to actually, share some of that, feminist thinking. It also links to around food production, that where because climate change has a direct impact into food production and food insecurity. And we know that specifically South Africa and Africa, we are actually a food secure continent, but in a household we are food insecure, because everything else we produce, we export, and then we then buy it back. And obviously, which is fundamentally speaks to the model of economics that we've chosen, both as a country, but as well as the continent. I mean, just perhaps, on the issue around mobilizing women around SDGs, I think it has to be a continuous, at an institutional level, pay attention to, in this Commission for Gender Equality. We pay attention to the SDGs and this implementation. But fundamentally, one of the key issues we've seen is the fact that there's not been a localization of SDGs, because they need to be integrated into national development programs, into provincial development programs, into local development programs. because it's actually such a good global consensus document which guides us in terms of what needs to happen, but also it requires concomitant ratification of several conventions. One of those, for example, the Convention on International Economic and Social Rights. I know, for example, we have signed it in South Africa, but we've not ratified it because we know the implications. Because ratifying the ICR actually compels government not only to set standards, but also to allocate resources per developmental priority and several countries in Global South actually have not, they've signed it, but they've not ratified it. And I think perhaps that's what we need to upscale in terms of demands. And the SDG conference is coming up in September, and I do think that we probably part of the organization we need to get is to really make sure that civil society and institutions like constitutional institutions like us to speak together and say, what do we present in September and how do we put pressure within our government to actually ratify the International Convention on Social Rights. Thank you. Notice.
Thank you. I will not take much time. I'll say 1 minute only. That I mean to eliminate the discriminations of the man and women and bring the gender equality. It's equally important to sensitize the man community, and it will help the women only afterwards. So why we are working with the, and second thing is that realize the women that they can capable and they can do something, because the women herself is the enemy of because of the traditional and patriarchal systems. They believe that they can't do something, they can't go with the technology, they don't believe in themselves. They says that we cannot go outside and travel and other things. I mean, so there's some kind of the beliefs which was, I mean, inserted into their demands to our customs, traditions and other things. So need to do the two front. One is the sensitize the men equally, and second, the women, we give the confidence to them that they are equal capable. So both the things we need to do simultaneously to bring in the gender equalities in ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to see whether there are any other questions from the audience before we sort of wrap up.
I'm graduating from Cote d'Ivoire. Sorry for my English, because we are first in country. I'm a member of the Economic, Social, Environment, and Cultural Affairs. So my concern is to how about research that was done regarding we all know that in our country, the youth have no interest in rural activities as in regard to what the modern group does, and they have no specific interest. I think by the time they will know, maybe they will not very much interested in what is going on in the rural areas. I don't know if some research has done some study to evaluate what are really the needs. What do they think about all the activities that is going on in the local area where we are? So are there some kind of solution to make them be aware of that? Because the question of environment always that we raise up. So we need to think about that now, so that we'll know if are they still be concerned about all these activities in the river. If not, the gap, we will have a gap. We have a gap. We have a gap with that concerning the women and the girls.
and that even technology that we develop. And then, do they want to be what the way the model works? That are all my concerns. Sorry for my-
Felicitación, you did very well. We completely got that. And I think that's a great question because it talks about the challenges that were highlighted here were really in relation to older women who are married, who are dealing with traditional leaders and their husbands and that, but it didn't really talk about the girls. What is happening to the rural girls. So that's something that maybe the panel would like to answer. We'll take one more question and then I think there was a question online. So if somebody could read the question, that would be useful too.
Thank you very much. I missed the questions, but I've been following the responses. And I looking at the theme of the commission, we are currently looking for innovative ways, meaning that the strategies that we can use to make it's time for us to assess, to reflect, difference of the things, what progress are we making, where are we failing, and how to improve. And spoke very well about what's going on in your programs. And it's just sitting thinking that how often do we make use of African mechanisms, African problems, resolving them with African solutions. How often do we really prioritize some of these instruments like the African Charter on Women and People's Rights? I know Anna alluded to the protocol on the rights of women in Africa. Using some of these instruments so that we gain the respect and the trust. Because when you look at this patriarchy and the challenges, the conflicts that we are having, it's like there's a contest. It's like there's power. It's like we are fighting to be over and above many persons. And we need to review our manner of approach. How do we meet the current situation? Because the situation is quite toxic. And also, there's a point that I want you to bring. For example, how do we speak into the language? The language that I was speaking in another meeting at the time about feminists. If I go into a rural communities, I'm a feminist. Do we understand what I'm doing? Does it resonate well? So it's a matter of reviewing ourselves, reviewing the gains we made, the gaps, and how we close them, and prioritizing the regional mechanisms, and making sure that the state report and domesticate. We don't have such laws which could help us to solve the African problems. It's very for us to refer to CEDAW, this process as well. We come in big numbers. And it's very rare that participants in the African Commission on Women and People's Rights, very few for South Africa, for example, officials attend and participate. And when you read provisions of the African Charter, it really relates to us. It speaks about groups, community, responsibility of children. Lastly is the laws. We seem to have some laws in South Africa and in other countries that perpetuate inequality and subjugation. How come we still have these laws? And what does what is it required for us to do in such a way that it's done in a harmonious way? We're not doing it in the way that there's fear, there's conflict, there's competition, there's violence. But we are bringing peace, we are preventing conflict, we are encouraging, harmony in the society and the respect. And this culture
our culture. It's not something that it's promoted well. We need to look at what are the failures of it, because culture is not static. There might be some areas that need to be wiped out because violence, constitution, violence in its life, and then how we, bring into the development that we have strategies, and also it is quite a huge program, which I think that we sometimes want to move fast. And we think we have fixed solutions, and your question as well, that how we do other counterparts. It is an opportunity that we need to explore, but the manner of approach is the one that we really need to make sure that we get to try. Yeah, thank you very much.
Sorry, before you take the mic away, you didn't introduce yourself.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. My name is Colette Mujani. I'm with the Human Rights Institute of South Africa.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. So there's a lady who came here at the back and was showing me 5 minutes ago that we have 5 minutes left. I don't know how strict they are with the time, but maybe they are very strict. So
Online.
okay, well, you can give one question online. I don't think we will have the opportunity to respond and for the panel to respond to that question, but please go ahead.
Okay, so what we also need to be taught the early warning system so that they can be part of the conversation of minimizing the impact of natural disasters.
Oh, sorry, that was lovely. That was nice and short. I think that your summary was really great. I don't think that I should summarize anymore. You sort of really encapsulated the conversation and sort of brought in a lot of the points about some of the things that are way forwards, conversations with stakeholders, looking at, I was actually wondering whether anyone's going to talk about Agenda 2063 from the African Union. But I think we can take your last statement as a summary and a closing. But just to say, for me, being the board person of CSVR, but also have worked in the space quite a while back, and I was telling Anna and Pinky over lunch that I was fatigued when people said, maybe come back to the agenda. I just thought, no, it's too much work. I'm tired. Things don't move. But it's actually quite enriching and encouraging to see the things that people are doing on the ground, to see even the immersion of new topics on technology and climate change, and just some of the challenges that are still existing, but some of the innovations that have happened. And I just wanted to congratulate all of you that are working in this space. It is something that we have to continue doing, not just as our work, but as ourselves, because it affects us as women, not just in our work. So thank you very much for joining the panel, and maybe we can take more insight. Yeah. No video. And I don't know whether outside there is like a space for people to chat. You want a picture?
Yes.
With everybody?
Yes.
Oh, excuse me. Before you leave, perhaps we can just have a picture.
Yes.
And if people can just come to the back here, and then we can take a picture of the people that were involved. Thank you.
Thank you.